Okay, so number 8, we want to, again, check our flow chart, and it says to find the greatest common factor, and we cannot find a greatest common factor here. So our next step is to find out if there are 2 or 3 terms. There are 3 here. That means we need to do rooftop, and kind of a little messy here, but we have x squared times negative 1. So this would be negative 1x squared that we're multiplying to, and we need to add to 5x. Well, the only things that multiply to negative 1x squared would be these two numbers, and that would give you 0. And that's not going to be able to give you 5x even if you change the signs around. So this one, since it doesn't have a greatest common factor and it can't factor with rooftop, it is called prime. Okay, looking at number 9. It says factor completely. Now, if you look at it, remember the very first thing you check is if there's a greatest common factor, and in this one there's not. So then you ask yourselves, does this have 2 terms or does it have 3 terms? It has 2 terms, and so we try to see if it's the difference of squares. Remember, for it to be a difference of squares, you have to have a difference, which is the minus here, and then each of these terms has to be perfect. So what makes the 49w squared perfect would be 7w and 7w, and what makes the 1 perfect would be 1 times 1. And since it's a negative, one of these has to be a negative 1. So then we have 7w minus 1 and 7w plus 1. And we have completed that. Number 10, we're going to factor this completely also. And again, the first thing you want to do is try to find a greatest common factor. And so to find the greatest common factor, you notice that there's a 2 in each term. So if we do 2 times y squared, we get 2y squared, and 2 times negative 100, and we get negative 200. So as we're looking now, y squared minus 100 has 2 terms. So on the flow chart, we go on to the difference of squares. So this one would be y times y, and this one would be 10 times 10. Because it's a negative, it's 1 negative and 1 positive. So we bring down the greatest common factor, and then it would be y minus 10 and y plus 10. All right, so that finishes up on the new stuff for our test. Now we're going to work on the review stuff for the test. Now remember, the review stuff is just as important as the new stuff is. For number 11, there's a couple of different strategies that you could use in order to get the equation of the line that has the slope of negative 4 and contains the point 2, negative 2. One thing that you could do is the point slope formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. We've got y minus the y number, which is negative 2. M is negative 4 times x minus the x number. Remember that a minus a negative turns to plus a positive, and we distribute. So this would be negative 4x plus 8, and then that's y plus 2. To get y by itself, we would subtract 2 on both sides. This is y equals negative 4x plus 6. So then your answer would be C. Another student today took this x and this y and just plugged them in to see if they worked. So this would look like negative 2 equals negative 4 times the x, which is 2, minus 10. This ends up giving you negative 2 equals negative 18. I did this in the A, and that doesn't work. If you tried it in what was the answer that we found, that negative 2 equals negative 4 times 2 plus 6, this gives you negative 2, and so because negative 2 is equal to negative 2, then C was your answer that way as well. You could also take your answers, your y equals, and you could type them into the calculator. So if we were to type in negative 4x plus 6 into the calculator, we would just need to see if the point 2, negative 2 was on that line. So if we go to the table, we find 2, negative 2 right here. So yes, this one is part of the answer. If we tried the other one, let's say we tried the minus 10 here, you would find that the 2, negative 2 is not there. All right, so looking at number 12, it says, what is the range of the function f of x is equal to x squared plus 6 when the domain is negative 2, 4, and 7? So the f of x, which is y, range is y, domain is x. So what it's asking you to do is take these three terms and plug them in for the x right here. So remember that when you plug them in, it's a negative 2 in parentheses squared plus 6, and that's going to equal your y number. So that turns out to be 10. Then you try the 4. Y equals 4 squared plus 6. That is going to give you 22, and then y equals 7 squared plus 6, and that gives you 55. So your answer is 10. Now what you want to be very careful on, if you do not put the parentheses around your negative number, you will end up with the answer of 2, and that answer is there. If you look at letter A, this is a big distractor right here. It has the answer of 2 if you forget to put your parentheses around the negative sign. So please make sure that you put a parentheses around the negative. All right, number 13 is asking for the solution to the system of equations. Remember that if we're trying to find a solution to the system of equations, we have to do one of three methods. We could do graphing, substitution, or elimination. In this case, because the x's and y's are lined up on the same side of the equal sign, we could do elimination. Now I want to get the x's to go away, so I'm going to multiply everything on the top by a negative 3. So this would be negative 3x minus 3y equals negative 30. Then I'm going to write down the other one, and I'm going to add the two equations together. So this is negative 7y equals negative 21. If we divide by negative 7 on each one, y is equal to 3. Well, if you look at it, the y is equal to 3. Here's your y number, there's your x number. The only one that has the y that's equal to 3 would be letter C. But to double check that it's a 7 that it's connected with, we just plug that number back into one of the original equations. So I'm going to put the 3 in for the y and solve for x. So this would be minus 3 on both sides, and x is equal to 7. So that means, remember, you put them in alphabetical order. 7, 3 would be your answer. Number 14, the area of the rectangle is 48m to the 5th n squared, and the width is 12m squared n. Remember, its area is equal to length times width. So the area of 48m to the 5th n squared, we don't know the length, but we do know that the width is 12m squared n. So then all you have to do is say 12 times what gives you 48. 12 times 4 gives you 48. Then you say m squared times what gives you m to the 5th. So m squared times m to the 3rd gives you m to the 5th. N times what gives you n squared, and that would be n. So 4m to the 3rd n is your answer. Number 15. This one is asking for the slope of the line. On your formula chart, the slope of a line formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And so if we were to label these x and y, number 1 and number 2, we would plug these numbers in. We would have 2h minus h over 3h minus 5h. Now, combining like terms, we would have 1h over negative 2h. And since we have an h on the top and the h on the bottom, they cancel out, and we're just left with negative 1/2 for the slope of this line, which is b. Number 16, what is the slope of the line f 5x minus 4y equals 10? Remember, slope is m when you use this equation. That means we need to get the y by itself. So we would need to first subtract 5x on both sides. This is negative 4y equals negative 5x plus 10. If we divide by negative 4, then y is equal to 5 over 4x. Remember, these two make a positive. And then this would be plus 5 over negative 2. Now remember, it's only the slope that we were looking for right here. That's our m. So 5/4 is our answer. And the last one, we're trying to find the solution to the system. Remember that there's 3 ways to find the solution to a system: graphing, substitution, and elimination. The problem is we don't have any equations. So if we look at it, it says some values for 2 linear equations are shown in the table. So what we have to do is make an equation out of each table. Now there's 2 methods that I'm going to show you. I'll show you one method on this table and the other method on this table, but you could do one method on both of them if you want to. Okay? One method is to do the wings. That would be the change in y over the change in x to figure out what your slope is. So then this is going down 8, so that's a negative 8, up 4, so it's a positive 4. So the change in y is negative 8, the change in x is 4, so your slope is a negative 2. Now to figure out the rest of it, you just do your y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And you'll just choose one of the points to plug in. Y minus 7 is equal to negative 2 times x minus a negative 6. Then you just simplify. We get a plus a positive right there for the minus a negative, and we distribute. So negative 2x minus 12. If we add 7 to both sides, this would give us y equals negative 2x minus 5. So that's the equation for the first table. But you can also use your calculator. So I'm going to show you the second method on the second table. If you go to, in your calculator, go to Stat and Edit, you type in the numbers that are in the X column. So negative 3, 2, 5, and negative 5. Then in the second column, you type in those numbers, negative 4, 11, 20, and negative 10. So once you've done Stat, Edit, these are the steps, Stat, Edit. Now we go back to Stat again, but this time we're going to arrow over to Calculate. And we're going to do number 4, which is the one that looks like y equals mx plus b. So if we type that and press Enter, it will give us the other equation, y equals 3x plus 5. Now, we're not quite finished because it's asking for the solution. So we want to see where these two things cross, where these two lines cross. So we're going to go to our calculator, and in the y equals, we're going to type in both equations. So negative 2x minus 5 and 3x plus 5. Now let's look at the graph. We want to see where they're crossing. And they're crossing right here at the point negative 2, negative 1, it looks like. But we want to be sure. So what we're going to do is go to the table, second and graph, and you want to look to see where the numbers are the same. So if you look right here, the numbers are the same on the y at negative 1. So negative 2, negative 1 would be the point of intersection. But we want to go back and just double check what the question is asking. It says, what is the x value of this point? The x value would simply just be the negative 2. Remember, the best way to study for a test is to rework problems. So print this review out again, rework the problems, and come back here to see if you got them right. Good luck on your test.